So with those parts fitted, the handbrake and the prop shaft and the speedo cable, I'm getting ready to put the seat box on. And what I've done, let's have a look, take you over to some of the automotive metal panel bolt-on sealant that I've used, just to try and stop some of the rattles and also to keep it sort of airtight. Because once this is dried out inside, let's have a look, get quite a lot of condensation, and admittedly there's quite a lot of airflow at the moment with various leaks. Not least, like for example, there's one here, look, and that's, I could probably fill that up. My finger's changing the light there. I put a bit of sealant in there. Anyway, so I've got sort of done this side, and we'll have to see how that goes. I mean, it might actually be too thick. It's quite a warm day though, and it does press in. Incidentally, if you do use some sort of sealant like this, it cuts easiest with scissors. Yeah, like knives don't actually cut it, it just sort of stretches it. I mean, you can just pull it and pull it and pull it and pull it until it stretches. You end up getting a thin affair like that, so it's best to use scissors. Right, time to start an update from the wheel. Now the reason I do an update from the rear wheel is because when I first got this truck, the oil-filled hubs, I mean most of the later ones are grease-filled, but this one was oil-filled, and someone had welded the filler hole. There's the sort of evidence where the filler screw on the driving member was welded shut, and when I took it and welded it and took it to pieces, it had an old nail for a split pin, and because it had leaked there in the past, and I kind of fixed it up, and I always check to see whether it were leaking. So that's why I do an update from the wheel, because you just like to see whether it was leaking. This hasn't leaked for months and months and months. It's ready to go. So if we pan out a bit now, it's been painted up. Just make sure I've got clearance on that hedge there. I don't want to sort of scratch it now, it seems crazy. Here's detail of that sticker that I left on, because of these used door tops, which I've refurbed. Now if you look through there, I fitted the seat box, and I've sort of test fitted a couple of seats. And I've actually fitted the dash there. There's a couple of wires. There's a purple wire for an interior light, and it's probably not fully fitted. It'll soon be time to sort of test fit the electrics with, the seats aren't very good by the way, but it'll soon be time to test fit the electrics with a sort of charged battery, just to see if we've got something. So obviously we want to put those piston rings in, and when we put the pistons and piston rings in, we can fit the oil pump and properly fit the sump. Now, the way I'm going to do the timing, I've actually got to have the head on to do the timing. So down here, that's what the crank looks like when she's at top dead centre on number 1. So the timing marks, let me take you over to where the timing marks are. Can't get in there. Well, they're underneath that timing mark cover, because I've just put it back. Now on my wheel, someone's put this mark, which corresponds to this mark, I've noticed. But I'm not going to do it that way, because it is guesswork, because there's nowhere to actually, there's no alignment mark. I mean, this could be to that hole, it could be to something else. So while the chain isn't on, we can't really do anything, but I do know that that's top dead centre, and the marks are pretty well visible on the flywheel with the pointer. So going over this manifold, to me it looks like someone tried to drill it a broken bolt or something. Hit it with a drill there, and sort of left some of the. It's a 5/16 UNF. It just don't seem as crisp as some of the other holes, or the 3 other holes for the exhaust pipe. Now I've cleaned it with a thread tap, so the stud does screw into it. So we'll have to see how that is. You know, it would explain why there was all that sort of exhaust putty around there. But I've cleaned it out. I mean, I could modify the clamp itself to make up for that room. Offset the hole in the clamp, or bend the stud. Anyway, that was annoying when I found that. I mean, it might be nothing. Nice silver paint still on the exhaust manifold here. So what I've done is I've loosened all of the fixings, both sides. This one was a bit of a bugger, this fixing. I thought I was going to break the bolt, and I used a centre punch and a hammer to keep hitting it. That's why it's all bright. I don't know, it's all bright where I kept hitting it, and it came loosened. So they're all now loosened, all of them. So we can take the exhaust manifold off. So what's of note is where we've got a situation of that clamp, it goes in that sort of slot. Let's have a look at the other side. There it is. Now I've loosened it, so the clamp actually goes across those 2 faces rather than sticking up in the air like that. But that's where it goes. It goes either side of the inlet manifold. He says taking it away. There's the inlet manifold. Oh no, sorry, that's the exhaust manifold. So it goes either side of the exhaust manifold. Let's have another look at that. So there's the clamp. There's the clamp, and that silver thing, it's not the inlet manifold, it's the exhaust manifold upside down. And that's where she goes. I'm taking it off upside down, hence the diagram does show it upside down sort of thing. It's exhaust. That inlet seems to me to be filled up with sawdust. I mean, that's what you call a dirt dauber. So that's the other inlet next door to it. Is the inlet there, and then next to it is another inlet, and then finally the end exhaust. So I don't know what that is, but it's on all the exhaust. It's on. I don't know what that is, but it's on all the inlet ports, both sides of. That's crazy stuff. I mean, it could be crystalline something or other. It looks like someone filled up the manifold full of sawdust. Oh, it's weird. We're gonna have to probe this. Wow, it's like it's got some serious rabbits down there, you know. It's like sand. It's like sand. And it smells of petrol. No wonder it stopped running. That's unbelievable. I mean, I really did not expect that. I've got to say, didn't expect it. So here I am the next morning with the valve removal tool. I'll just tighten that up, and these discs, they're held on with a couple of little collets, and we'll just get on with that and remove some of these valves. And when we take a valve off with the springs, there's 2 springs, a disc, 2 little collets in the valve, and we'll keep that as a separate entity. Label which cylinder it come from. Okay, so all the valves are out, which means obviously the valve springs are out as well on the other side. Now let's see if we can get a torch. We've got a torch on the floor now. The sawdust factor, it's in all of the, particularly the inlets, and on some of them you can't even see the valve guides because it's all full up with sawdust, sawdusty stuff like sand. Anyway, so we're gonna clean this and then have a quick look at the condition of the valve seats. So we can just get the rest of the trash, garbage out of the cylinder head and paint it. Cylinder head coming along nicely, got 4 more valves to fit. This is the paint job, which is the light Admiralty grey. I've got to touch up with a finer brush. I want to rotate it round. Got the stud for that bit. There's the date, rear right hand side. It's a 61, not a 64. Kept thinking it was a 64, but it's a 61. Which ties in with the rest of the engine. Doesn't match the block, which is the 29th of January 62. So there is a month, or nearly 2 months between the block and the head. But that'll do. This little oil hole, got to make sure that don't get blocked. That goes to the banjo pipe. So what I'm doing now is I've got this 1/2 inch UNF thread cleaner, and I'm just going through all the 1/2 inch UNF holes. Now there's 13 main ones plus 4 of the rocker ones. And it's quite a laborious task just to clean the threads out, make sure there's no rubbish at the bottoms of the holes. It'll be a good time to refit that properly, because once the head's on it'll be hard to get down there. It goes on this. Right, so I'm loosely fitting the floor. So the floor that side, it turns out I need a mixture of nuts and bolts. 2 nuts and bolts, 3 nuts and bolts, 2 bolts without nuts, and another 5 screw bolts like these to the other side. And then on this side, these are nuts and bolts. That's a screw bolt. So there's a mixture of, these are nuts and bolts. These are just bolts without nuts. So it probably would be a good idea to put some of that sealant I've got left over underneath this panel. So we'll do that. In fact, I might do it on all the panels. It depends how bad they get. The rat factor. I've been reading the manual about the valve timing. This is timing without the timing chain to start with. Now what I'm on here, I've got the keyway, and it's at 9 o'clock. It is at 90 degrees here, and this is the EP mark. Okay, so let's have a look and see what the EP mark means. Now let's hope we can get in, because I have to really adjust tidying up this timing cover, engine front cover from the Land Rover, and getting ready for a paint job. Now there's a fairly good paint spot here, seems to correspond to the EP mark on the crankshaft. So let me explain myself, that the crankshaft sticks out of here, and the crankshaft's got a keyway with a woodruff key in it holding the stuff on. Now the woodruff key, if it comes round here and lines up to this, it's pretty well going to say EP on the crankshaft flywheel if you take the inspection cover off and have a look at the pointer. So whether that's a factory mark, and it's, you know, this is the original paint under here, and it's worth noting that my engine was the dark grey, which is a kind of Series 1, even though it's like a 1962 prefix A Series 2A. It's got earlier paint on the engine. Anyway, and there's another mark right here. Now that, if you were to line up the woodruff key to that, you'd be at top dead centre. Now as I'm going to use 90 octane fuel in this, I want to be 6 degrees back of top dead centre, which I'll mark. It's marked on the flywheel, 3 degrees, 6 degrees, top dead centre, vice, you know, and other things. So these marks, whilst they're not even mentioned in the workshop manual, the timing cover marks, but they are there. That's definitely a factory mark for top dead centre. Although I'll be using the flywheel with the 6 degrees back of top dead centre because of the fuel we're using. So you can use 70 octane fuel on this, or probably up to 100 octane fuel. It's got a very wide variety of fuel you can use on this. As long as it's petrol, you know, it could be contaminated, stale, what have you. If you can test the octane, you can set the timing likewise. So I've had my front cover bolts laying around for quite a while, probably a year, and they're going to be cleaned up. Put some silver grey paint on the exhaust manifold. There's an upside down lion. I don't know what numbers mean. So one of those threads is a bit dicky. It's the one of these threads is a bit dicky. It's the one that's sticking up too much, that one. I might have to modify the exhaust for that. That's alright, that's where the water pump goes anyway, so it should have not so much whoops there. So I'm here in the rain actually. I'm putting the exhaust manifold on with the inlet manifold, and the 4 bolts holding the inlet to the exhaust manifold are a little loose. That's gone in there with the one-piece gasket on this version. Just got a few more nuts and bolts to put in, and that will be basically the exhaust manifold in. So I've got to put the dipstick tube, the exhaust downpipe. This is the one, this exhaust manifold's got dicky studs, so the exhaust might not go on there quite straightforwardly. I already put the starter in because it's just easier to do at this stage, hoping that that's not going to foul the exhaust. It shouldn't do. Anyway, so the dynamo is on, and that's rather fussy. The water pump is not on, and neither is the thermostat housing. We've got a filler tube on, so you stick distributors on with rudimentary ignition timing sorted out. We've got some marks on the front wheel, on the crankcase pulley. Now the dog lock washer isn't done up yet. So that mark you're looking at there, it means it's at 6 degrees before top dead centre. So that's what I want for 90 octane fuel, which is probably what we're using. I've got got a new water pump down there. It's the fuel pump down the back there. You might just be able to see in the centre of the screen. I had to get a red coloured speedometer grommet there. Now I've got 3 kind of loose wires in the harness. I don't exactly know what they do. They're just a bit of a weird one. So I just pull him back a bit to see what we've been quite busy just putting the ancillaries on, really. Yeah, there's plenty to be thinking about in the rain at the moment. One of the things missing is the HT lead from the coil to the centre of the distributor. We've got the coil over there, just put a little bung on the bottom of it. And in the head there goes the heater tap. So I'm going to withdraw around now in the rain, have a look through the window. So I've got a fuel tank cover panel in there. The floors aren't bolted down, the bolts are in the post. The 4-wheel drive selector isn't set up. And there's no heater. So it looks like we've made stunning progress and not really made any videos, but that's not really true because the only thing we've put on is the front grille and radiator combined. Putting the fan on sort of midway between the 2 processes. And of course the fan belt is still to be set because we had to slacken the pulley right off, and just started to put the thermostat housing up. Now I don't know about the gap on this Land Rover between the bonnet and the wing, because it's a fairly massive gap, but I guess if it was touching you'd scar the wing up, you know, so maybe it does have that gap. I mean, I'm not actually that I'm not that au fait with them as to what that gap should be, but I mean, I'm closing down on the bonnet strip nicely. I'll see if this works, if there's something to say about this. Yeah, that's going to be a bit of a bugbear. I haven't tightened up the bolts on that because I wanted to position it and it's not working. Alright, so I bought some HT leads today and they don't fit. Thought I could make a note of this front prop shaft. I want to put a new gaiter on this, and the UJs or cross joints or whatever you want to call them, they're okay. So in order to split this thing in half to put a new gaiter on, this mark is of importance because it lines up with this balancing weight. You can't see the whole weight because the gate is in the way. It's a small square of metal there. Anyway, this side and that line are in line. So when I undo this dust cover, which is threaded, I'll unscrew that and it should separate the 2 halves of this is the splined half and this is the other side of the prop shaft. We'll separate the 2 just by pulling them apart and get the gaiter off. So here comes me prop shaft. So I'll be able to use this mark here to align these splines to this mark here. Just this will come off easily over the end there. It was quite a bugger to get it up there actually. Okay, so that's what it looks like. The dust cover. It's the old gaiter, which does have a hole in it. Anyway, that's that. And the other part's now over there. I'll give these a quick clean and spray up. Fit a new gaiter on. These UJs were made by Hardy Spicer. It's embossed in the casing. Okay, so the prop shaft is back from spraying, and kind of missed a bit with the sprayer there. And if you look, take you over to the other one that's got a missed bit, so I'll address that before it goes on. Shouldn't be that hard. And here I've got this is the gaiter, and they call them circlips, they're Jubilee clips, and it's part number 276484. So that's the kit, which is the gaiter and circlip kit. So when I put it back together, I'll put some grease down there, general purpose. And the first thing to do will be put a circlip up here, or a Jubilee clip up here, put the gaiter on up here, put a circlip down there, put them together, and we'll see how we go in stages. So there's a comparison of the new with the old. I think this is just talcum powder used to store stuff. Right, so let's grease this shaft. We could put this on first, then grease that. Okay, so the main tool at the moment was a screwdriver to undo the Jubilee clip to get it right up here, and then use the screwdriver to work this seal over onto the prop shaft. It's a very tight fit, but you can work it on there eventually. This is the dust cover. These are the splines. So if you remember now, I've got a mark here. This line here corresponds to a mark on this, which is there. It's quite hard to see, but it's that mark. So that mark and this mark will be parallel with each other, or in line with each other. So I'm about to get really greasy. I'm about to grease this shaft, probably put some grease inside. But of course you want to make sure that this is safely on here before you join them together, or screw up the dust. And we'll screw up the dust cap. Okay, that's how it looks, with the mark here corresponding to the mark there. This is how it was when it was taken apart. So the dust seal has done up all the threads, bar just one, it's done up. That's alright. So now I'm going to put the gaiter across into position I want it to be in. This is with it compressed together, and I'll do up the circlips, or Jubilee clips. I'll take that off now, just mask the bleed nipple there. I didn't mask that one, that was bad, wasn't it? I have to get some emery out, clean that off, paint it over with a grease nipple. So I've got my gaiter all clamped up with the crocodile clips. Before I fit it, I just want to spray this up. There's some down the other end as well, which just didn't get any paint in there. So there is a part number for this. It's a petrol only part number for the Series 2A, and what it does is it blanks over the cutout in the wing for the diesel exhaust pipe, and it's not available anymore easily, so I've just fabricated a piece out of aluminium. It's roughly the same shape, and I've drilled the holes which correspond to the holes already in the wing. You might be able to see one round there. When I'm fitting something like this, I've found that this pop rivet, I've sort of given it a couple of clicks. It's not gone all the way, it's not popped. Okay, now I've loaded up the second one, and I'm going to come down here and find the hole, which is about there. Now there's quite a lot of flex in the wing, What I'm going to do is pop this pop rivet a little bit way in. Okay, so that's sort of splodged out. But I've left the end on. I can come back to that. Like for example, I could come back to this top one, pop it down there and finish chipping it. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put this one in next, and then I'm going to do this one. So I'll have them all sort of a little bit in, but not all the way in. It just makes it. It does make it easier to line it all up. Okay, well as that one was the last one in, I've popped that one off. Now I'll come back up here, pop this one on the top. Now unfortunately for me, this has had it. This part is not, this is to do with this up here. There's some holes for that. I think it goes into the mud shield there. And it wasn't part of this, but the iron oxide done for that. Actually I meant aluminium oxide, of course, you know, rust. So let's have a look at this. It's the cover plate on the left hand wing for the redundant exhaust hole. So you find these cover plates on the petrol ones from 1961 onwards, and the part number for that is 330144, and I found it too hard to find, so I just fabricated this piece, which looks, it's ready for paint now, but I fabricated this from 1.2mm aluminium, which I can cut on my bandsaw. It's quite easy to work with. Unfortunately I lost one of the mud shield fixings, but that was due to the corrosion on the wing already. I actually wanted to move this, so I actually got to take the handbrake off, otherwise I can't move it. There's been a little bit of let's see what we can do with this. We turn the ignition on, we've actually got ignition lights now. If you look at the ammeter and the fuel gauge, oops, we've actually got power, and the panel switch works. The cold start warning light, it's not working at the moment, and this vehicle is fitted with the heater element on the carburettor. I think that may have something to do with it. Alright, let's see if we can move it now. Alright, now we've got to take this little old thingy off and paint over it. Remember where it goes, because it's a screen washer. The screen washer bottle goes there, so that's like the first one that it meets. Oh, I'm on the back of the Land Rover today trying to get the wind level down. So what it is, there's a weather strip that goes down here, and let's take it over to the other side. Shazam. This is the weather strip I'm talking about. Okay, I'll have to do that. I'll recut that without my nail in there. So this is the weather strip I'm talking about. Dr. Evil. Okay, let's go back to the other side. So it's all very well. We just put that there, and now it's not as straightforward as that, because this being the 2A in that, I can't find that part number anywhere, so I'm using part number 395674. And what I've done to that, I've cut it down. I've cut this down so that it'll fit there. Okay, because also this long wheelbase 109 is fitted with this large rubber bumper there, that bump stop near the anti-loose, which sometimes they're not as big as that. Yeah, so the long and the tall of it is that using the holes for the pop rivets that are in there as a guide, I'll have to drill those holes in the back of the weather strip so that we can fit the pop rivets in there. Now that would be easy if 3 of the holes weren't next to the edge here. So you know, basically I'll show you that you can't get a drill in there. You can't get a drill in there without it being at a bit of an angle. It's a good way to snap a drill. And this one here, where the chain is even harder. So what I've done is gone back to cardboard. I've gone back to the shredded wheat packet actually. I've cut out a bit of shredded wheat packet the same length as the cut down weather strip part. What I'm going to do is masking tape that into position, use a Sharpie marker, then I'm going to masking tape it back on this and drill through me holes. So it should work quite easily like that. So here we are, I've got the marks on the white side, and I've written top there so that I know that the orientation of the weather strip is going to be correct. Because I mean, you could put it like that, but I don't think that's how they intended the weather strip to be. I think they intend it to be like that. That's the way it's going on anyway. So just got to find a way of clamping that on there and drilling through without going through this part of the rubber seal. That's the way I'm doing it. So here's a mullet brand new weather strip with loads of holes in. And this is an example here. The original hole has got a countersunk sort of space for the rivet, so it's a good idea to try and emulate that with your hole, which I've tried to do, so it makes the rivet seat in. And the distance for the pop rivet to go through and connect is less, especially on these ones where there's several layers, or 3 layers. So there we have it, with a piece of trim installed. And these holes incidentally for a number plate, which is not really on my to-do list at the moment. But this is all, it's all ready for a tailgate now. Making some progress with the electrics. These aren't brake lights, these are just tail lights, and the indicators are still to be connected. Still haven't got a number plate. I have to have a look at that in the dark, see how well it's lighting up. Well, jacked up the front of the vehicle. That clunk is indicative of what I'm doing. So in order to jack it up, I've used these axle stands under the spring base plates, and at first I jacked up on the centre of the diff to put the left one in, and I moved the jack along, and I actually had to jack up on the axle and put the axle stand under the silver bit. So basically jacked up on the black bit, put the axle stand under the silver bit. I didn't want to do it that way, but the trolley jack's so big, it's the only way I was going to get axle stand under there. So I've got both wheels off the ground. And what I'm doing is putting the front prop shaft in. And well, I've just had a massive issue with, there's a panic over it. It was actually still in gear. Alright, so that's pretty schoolboy error. Just not used to it. So I've got it turning, it's turning nicely now, so I can get back underneath it. Didn't need to move the floor. That's one of them things. I've also put the high range and low range lever in the neutral position. I've decided to get up close and personal shot of the prop shaft here. It's actually, the reason it's big in the screen is because I'm right next to it. See the jack there supporting the axle stand there, and if I go over the top of my head there, the other end. So the wheels, if I turn that one with my elbow, woo, you can see the wheel up there, just turning it. And it's not turning the diff, not turning the prop, because I don't know, maybe it's because of the differential and things. Anyway, so now if I turn the prop, we get turning the wheel over there. But earlier I couldn't find neutral and it kept turning the rear diff, which is chocked up over there. So looking at this, probably clean that a bit better. Let's have a look at that. Somehow the transfer case still got some dirt on it. Okay, you know, you may as well have it clean because things are so much easier to work on when they're clean. So let's have a look at underneath. There would be a floor panel, and over there is that toolbox and the seat box. So I didn't paint the bottom of the floor in the end, could have done. And we can see, oh, I'm right down by the engine now because I was tightening up the differential end. Let's have a look at the other end. I'll look up, took the floor out. Here's the gearbox end of the prop. So we can just turn it around and do the nuts up when we're down here. This is the high range, low range selector lever, the end of it right there. And there is the four-wheel drive selector lever. Okay, well that's about it from down here. There's not a lot to see really. Let's have a look at that exhaust. I've got to fit the downpipe soon. That's the tube for the dipstick, which I'm going to fit when I fit the downpipe, I suppose. I've got the downpipe here that's got to fit. So what I'm going to do is take the straight part, hopefully attach a couple of loose nuts to the studs, and then bring it up to attach it by a couple of loose bolts to that flange over there. Okay, so I was right indeed, that did need a half mooning, and it started to slide up there relatively easily. And if I take it down to the other end, just started to bolt it up on the intermediate pipe. So let's go back and have a look at this. Yeah, it's going to snug up there in just a minute. And the tool I used, let's go back and have a look at this. I haven't had this very long because I've burnt out my last drill. This is a Voach or something that I got off eBay for 18 quid. And at the moment, if you look after it, it's really sort of cost effective as a solution. When I was using the wrong, got actually a Dremel collet in there on that die bit, and these bits are lethal because you get metal splinters and everything. You've got to wear a really good pair of goggles with those. So I've got to say, fitting the exhaust with the wing off made it a lot easier. And you know, if you can get your wing off, if you have to change the exhaust, if you can get the wing off, it'll probably save you a little bit of time in the long run. Certainly going to save you a bit of hassle. Anyway, so I used a part number 517632, which is specifically for a 109, you know, the long model, and that's a petrol exhaust for 1961 onwards. I don't know where that stops, but this is 1961 onwards, and it went in real nice and easy. That was like Brit part number 517632. Let's have a look, follow it down. It's got a real nice contour, and it goes to the intermediate pipe there. You know, so this is a deep sill version. You certainly can't see it. You have to get under the vehicle to have a look for it. So that's nice. Right, I've just put 6 litres of oil in the sump, and as I change the I've changed the oil filter, which is around the corner there. We've got to put another 0.85 litres in, 850 mLs. So the time's come to have a look at the exhaust heat shield. And I don't know the part number for this because it's a second-hand part for a 2A. But this part number is, of course, 515506. And that's a little bracket. And I think I've put it on right because that little form there goes over the manifold, exhaust manifold, and it bolts on to one of the exhaust manifold bolts. And then this has got a little spacer. Got a part number which is actually 515505 for this spacer washer. So this is the left wing after a respray, and this side, the inside came up quite nicely. So what I've got here is the surveillance, and the part number is 330534, and it's this black thing. It's the lower valence, and it's 330534, and it's for the petrol and the diesel 109s Series 2A. And the 88 inch has the same thing, but it's a different part number. I thought they were interchangeable, but they're not. I figured that the dipstick should be sort of yellow. If we have a look down here, we have got a little bit of a problem. We do need to charge the battery. This wing panel is not lining up how I would like. And I need to know whether it's because the wing is bent or some other, twist on the wing. It does look twisted. I do know that when the number plate goes on, it pushes it in like that, so that the light here faces down. That wasn't very well filmed at all, was it? Yeah, when the number plate's on, this points down, which is what you want. So we've got to get some sort of rust treatment going on here quickly. We need to charge the battery up to test for a spark. We need to figure out how to rotate the engine. Should be straightforward enough. This has got a bulb in, we've got to take this off and test it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the condenser and the points, simply because they're, after 30 years of sitting around, they're probably worth changing. They're not that expensive to change. Not that expensive to change, and so hopefully we're going to do this right. So the condenser, first thing to come off is that Phillips screw right there, probably in the center of the screen about. I'm going to undo the condenser. So I'm just looking at the replacement condenser and contact breaker points, and this is the part that slides in to the distributor body. And looking at it, the condenser, this is the part that has that posi drive screw on my one, and then here is where the screw for the actual contact breaker points goes, and they're the only two screws, just this one, and this plastic body slides in, and it should only be that. So what I've done is put the distributor pointing at number 1 cylinder. I'm just going to take out the old condenser and point set. Okay, so I've removed the little PZ1, whatever it was, I couldn't really measure it. And now what I've done is put some clean tissue paper in likely holes where the spring washer for the contact screw is going to drop down into the dizzy body, because how's your luck, doing it at this angle. I'm doing it with the engine literally in there, and it's likely to lose a piece down there. So I'm just looking at the difference, and this one this is the one that came off. This contact set is the one that came off, the machine a minute ago, and it's broken up here. And it's not seriously broken up, I suppose, but this one is more together. It's the same set basically. And what I can do is I can use a multimeter to have a look at this condenser, put a point here and an ohms point here, and see if it's similar. I know it's not working properly, because it just comes up straight up with a number rather than a slow build up of numbers, which is something I picked up off the internet. So this one will be ready just to put back on, and like I said, I've put tissue paper down the holes because, you know, I'm outside in the elements and it's very easy to drop a washer down the side of a distributor. Alright, it does look like I've got a problem with this new one being too wide as compared to this one. So that's quite narrow. Well, it certainly doesn't want to go, it doesn't want to fit. That's my main thing. So what I may do is use this hex and this hex and just swap these two parts round. These plastic parts. They're not actually any of the they're not actually any of the electrical components. It's not the condenser, it's not the point set, it's just the low tension terminal. Okay, so I've isolated the part that I'm going to put on the new contact set points. Contact point set. And so what I'm going to do now is take this piece of plastic off here with the white line, and we'll put this piece on in its place. Hopefully that'll be quite a straightforward swap. Just have to get the rotation round so that this is pointing on the outside, but I think we could just rotate that within the wire to do that. Okay, and this is what the new set looks like now. Now it's difficult to know what should go where. In regards, but I think it should all be touching, because the condenser is just to absorb too much current at a given moment, and the LT has to be in contact with the contact breakers as well as the condenser. So quite why there was so much insulation going on. I think they were just using nylon washers, you know, so that it can move freely and still maintain contact. That's what I'm hoping will. I mean, if the timing don't work, this will be the first port of call. It's not ideal. Of course, it's not ideal. You know, I've just had to take a brand new contact breaker point set, contact breaker set, and add a different distributor gubbins to it. It shouldn't interfere with the running of it. You know, it should be quite straightforward. Considering I've got one bolt holding the carburetor on, one bolt holding the carburetor on, top missing, you know, it's not even done up right anyway. That'll do for a start. Well, it's time for a cup of tea now. So we got the seat frame and the seat. It's a rather tatty seat, and at least the seats all match. They're sort of same period. And if I bring this forward, the driver's seat doesn't have these rubber things. And those. I mean, I know there's some sort of, you know, holes here for something, but it says in the manual it doesn't have them. So, but I've noticed the problem if you use the adjustable seat. I don't want to bring it forward because I prefer a little bit of leg. But if you do bring it forward, the seat can actually get stuck under this when you lean back on it. So I prefer it to be there. But it's you know, it's leaning against this. Don't like it really. I mean, obviously it's a bit agricultural. It doesn't have seat belts and stuff like that. Anyway, so let's move on.